The final journey of India's first Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, ended with a 17-gun salute accorded to him at Brar Square Crematorium. Around 800 service personnel, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, his family members and several other dignitaries paid their last respects at the Brar Square Crematorium. More than 130 crore Indians bid a final farewell to the country's brave general.
The funeral pipes beating for the general. A 17-gun salute for the martyr. And an outpouring on the streets for the people's general. As the mortal remains of General Bipin Rawat lay in state at his official residence, a long list of dignitaries lined up to pay their tributes to India's highest decorated general. Cutting across political lines, the first Chief of Defence Staff being saluted for his service to the nation. The general's two daughters, put to severe test by fate, have tragically lost both their parents, mustering the courage and dignity for his final farewell. Shortly after 2 p.m, General Rawat's mortal remains were carried out in ceremonial honor and put on an army cortege. As it moved through New Delhi, throngs showed up to witness the general's last journey. People with the tricolour running along the cortege, others showering petals on him. Chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai filled the air. Once the funeral procession reached the Delhi cantonment area, army personnel threw a ring around it. The cortege was taken forward in military ceremony. Pallbearers drawn from the three services carried the general's coffin to the Brar Square Crematorium. With Mrs. Madhulika Rawat's coffin and the general's coffin laid side by side, veterans and serving officers laying wreaths and saluting the first ever CDS of India. The family gets into a huddle, initiating the funeral rites. After the Tiranga was unwrapped and the pyres readied, the gun salute for the general sounded. The man who envisaged a strong India, passing into the ages.
All right, and we will in fact now go across to our guest joining us. Maruf Raza is with us, a group consulting editor of the Times Network. Also with us is Colonel DPK Pillay. Maruf, I'll come to you first. Very, very somber moment indeed. And as I was discussing earlier in the day with some of the other panelists, it is perhaps a befitting tribute that he leaves us united, not just as a polity, but also the different walks of life, from politicians to those in the military establishment, diplomats, all coming together under one roof over there, literally as it were, at the Brar Square as we pay respects to the departed general.
Absolutely, Madhav. I want to make 2 or 3 important points. One is that I think since independence, there have been only 3 funerals that have drawn the kind of support and response from the highest political leadership to the men on the ground. One very few of us know about was the funeral of Brigadier Mohammed Usman, who commanded the Parachute Brigade in the defense of Jhangar Naushera in 47-48, got a Mahavir Chakra, posthumous, and his funeral around India Gate, the procession, was attended by, among others, Lord Mountbatten, then Governor General of India, and Pandit Nehru. Then we had recently, some years ago, the passing away of the distinguished and elegant Chief of Air Staff, later Marshal of the Air Force, Chief Marshal of the Air Force Arjun Singh. That again drew a lot of response from not just the services, but I think the rank and file of Indian community, from political leadership down to several other normal citizens. But what we witnessed today in the case of General Bipin Rawat was terribly unusual. I hope this term is being used in the right sense, because one had never expected this kind of public show of emotion for an Indian general who was well known and regarded in military circles, but there was always, the way it was painted out in media debates, there was always a kind of debate between, was he saying and doing the right thing, or as the naysayers said, he was overstepping the mark. But that was his style, and he always went beyond the brief given to him, and that got him where he got to, because he really was not very concerned about ruffling feathers. He called a spade, which a military man should, but equally he took a very hard line on certain issues.
Okay.
As you know, about battling the support that the militants got in Kashmir,
Okay.
where he drew the line and everyone kind of jumped out of their chair and said, he's being dictatorial. But he said, you come into my operational area, I will shoot you after warning you. And this rattled a lot of feathers. Then secondly, he gave, if you may remember, Major Gogoi a commendation card immediately when there was a lot of noise amongst Kashmiri politicians that he had sort of destroyed the man's human rights. But those who chanted for him would have done well to write off a few checks in the name of the man who was seated on the jeep by Major Gogoi, who chose that as an option, which those of us who understand CI ops would say that was the best option that you could have adopted instead of firing at a crowd.
Oh.
And then a year or so later, when Gogoi was caught in unhappy circumstances in Kashmir, he stripped him of the award and gave him a disciplinary punishment. So he didn't play favorites. He reacted to the situation as it emerged.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very, very important quality that you've highlighted over there, Maruf. I just want to quickly bring in Colonel Pillay, because we have very limited time. Colonel Pillay, just very quickly, I think Maruf has articulated it very well. Just because he was a straight-talking general or somebody who held his opinions or wore his opinions on his sleeve does not in any way mean that he was not a fair person. He was someone who was very, very deep-rooted, not just in the traditions of the army, but also, we see, for instance, all the way from Ghazipur, relatives of Abdul Hamid coming in, people coming in from different parts of the country. We had one citizen who said that he used to see him at the bordering outposts of the country often, and that's why he had come, although he had never met the general personally, he had come all the way just to pay his respects to General Rawat. So that's the kind of person he was, touching the lives of even those who he was not directly in touch with through his actions, through his words.
That's true that General Rawat had, he completely changed the narrative as far as what we have been associated with. If you see, one of the first things that when we had this major ambush in Manipur, and he was the corps commander where he went on cross-border strike, which is something not heard of in a long time. He completely, as the corps commander, changed the narrative, and then when he was chief, what he did, and subsequently, like what we just heard about Gitul Gogoi, he knew what it means to be in the armed forces. He knew how to, and he had a certain, there was a swagger in the manner, the confidence that was there in him to do what was required and expected of him. He was never playing to the gallery, he said exactly what the army was meant to do. He was doing it, and until now we've been a very defensive, but he changed the narrative completely, even standing up to the Chinese in the Doklam Valley, where after 87, after what Sundarji had done, nobody had the courage to do that. And And something that is what captured the popular imagination. And he wasn't really playing to the gallery. A lot of people said that there was politics involved in it, and I don't believe that, because I was in the National Security Council. And if you say that Field Marshal Manekshaw played politics when he captured Bangladesh, I don't think that, because he would have shared the bouquets as well as the brickbats. What he did as a corps commander required guts, and what he did as a chief required guts. And there was a lot of outcry against what was done to Gogain, like what Major Raja just said, that he stripped him of his rank. There wasn't any hesitation in stripping and punishing Major Gogoi when he had violated the thing, and that is what distinguished him. He is a man for the moment.
Absolutely. It's those very, very difficult and testing times that certainly, of course, shows a man's character. Maruf Raza as well as Colonel DPK Pillay. We'll have to leave it there for the moment. We're slipping into a very quick break.